Hey everyone, thank you so much for being here with us today. It is a beautiful Tuesday here in Texas, and I hope that everybody else has really nice weather like this today. You are here for the Human Genome of Candidate Experience. We're talking about creating memorable candidate micro experiences. We're here with William Tincup. Hey, William.
Hey, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. It's a wonderful Tuesday.
It is. It is absolutely beautiful. And while we're waiting for everyone to log on, let's just go over a few items that will help you along through the webinar. You are in listen only mode. That means that you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. But please don't let that keep you from asking questions or sending anything you'd like to say through. You have a questions panel in your sidebar. So just open that up and anything you would like to say to William, I'll pass along. Share. Please use the RDaily hashtag to share all over social media. Let your friends and colleagues know where you are. They can join in with us. And last but not least, we are recording. You will receive a copy of this slide deck and the recording after the webinar, so keep an eye on that inbox. Please keep in mind that you'll receive an email from GoToWebinar right after you log off. That will not contain your slide deck. You'll get another one from info@recruitingdaily.com later in the day. Hey, William, do you mind going to the next slide? It's all about you. This is William Tincup. I'm sure everyone here knows exactly who you are, William. Do you want to introduce yourself?
No, not at all.
Not at all?
No,
He
zero
is our
interest.
commander-in-chief here at Recruiting Daily. I've included your whole bio there for everybody to look through and marvel.
Oh yeah, it's fun
Are you
stuff.
blushing yet?
I actually have one that's longer. If you want a longer bio, I'll send it to you.
Yeah,
But
I tried to put that in there, but the text was really tiny. So
no, happy to be here and happy to be talking about this particular topic, but not one of those people that needs to dwell on me at all. But we should dwell on our sponsor, which is
definitely.
Glassdoor. So we've got three quick slides about Glassdoor, and they sent them over. They actually sent a bunch of cool stuff over. I've done a bunch of stuff, a bunch of work with Glassdoor through the years, and behind the scenes, they're just really, really nice people, and they have really good research because of the things that they do and where they intersect with the market. And obviously, if you're not already kind of a Glassdoor kind of a fan, they've got some really, really good research, and so this would be an example of that. But also, they do a lot of good work with candidates, people that are looking, prospects and candidates that look at Glassdoor, and they look for context about your company, context about your CEO, context about what's going on with your company. So it is worth time spending time on your Glassdoor profile, but also as you're putting jobs out into the marketplace, it's a great place to also think about spending money with, because it's a different audience. It can be a different audience than some of the folks at LinkedIn and Indeed, which are also great places to put money, but just different. So that's Glassdoor. And we won't talk any more about Glassdoor, but I really want to stop for a moment and thank them because, getting people to sponsor stuff, we wouldn't be able to have webinars like this if we didn't have great sponsors like, Glassdoor. So
yes, they are an awesome company, but they're also really wonderful people to work with on the
they
back
are
end. Yes.
super easy to work with, which we can't say about a lot of folks. So we'll just kind of leave that there. This topic is near and dear to my heart. And the way that this webinar will play out is I'm going to talk a little bit about a journey, and then I'm going to talk specifically about how a person goes through a journey. And I've given that person a name, Sally. And we're going to talk, different kind of what we call inflection points where you or your team or parts of your team interact with Sally and what can be done to make those moments more special. You'll notice during this webinar that I use a lot of kind of really very specific language. And I'll start off by saying, I believe that recruiters are candidate advocates. So I'm one of these people that on the far end of the spectrum, I actually think that recruiters, whilst you get paid from the company, and some would say that you're the advocate for the company, for the CEO, for the team, for the hiring manager, for the sourcing team, etc. I actually believe that all that's true. You are those things, but push comes to shove, you're more of an advocate for your candidate, and should be more of an advocate for your candidate than any of those other people. Meaning you prioritize the candidate's interest over everyone else's, even your own. Which is going to sound a little bit off, but I'll try to explain it as we go. So one of the things that makes webinars really special is I'm not going to talk about coronavirus at all during this webinar, but one of the things that make webinars special is the questions that people ask. And I've asked to be interrupted when questions come in instead of waiting to this magical moment at the end. Of course, we will have Q&A at the end as well if you want to kind of keep your questions to yourself. But if you have a question, Ashley's going to break in and ask me the question, because
It's song and dance.
That's right. And it also makes for a better webinar, because if you have that question, chances are someone else has that question as well. So this slide right here, I thought was really interesting in the way that Google, of course, defined micro moments and micro experiences. So we'll start off by thinking about the candidate experience. Before I go to that slide, I don't want y'all thinking about tattoos yet. The candidate experience is an umbrella. And it's a wonderful umbrella, and we've talked about it as an umbrella of what happens from sourcing to onboarding for candidates for a little over a decade. And it's a wonderful umbrella, but we haven't done a great enough job underneath that explaining, okay, if you flip an umbrella over and you look at how an umbrella actually works, there's all these parts. There's all these things that actually make an umbrella an umbrella. Similar but different. Candidate experience is a generic term from the moment you source recruitment marketing, have them in your ATS, do a bunch of stuff with them, all the way to an offer letter, accepted, rejected, and onboarded, accept, or not. And all of these micro experiences or micro moments, things that should happen or can happen, where we dazzle the candidate, where we go out of our way to make their experience wonderful. And so that's what this whole webinar is about. Now we'll talk about tattoos. Just kidding. So the idea of tattoos kind of comes from, I want these to be permanently either etched in your brain, or in some ways, if you want to, go old-fashioned, put Post-it notes on your laptop or your monitor of your desktop. That's great too. But the idea is that we do things that are highly personalized. We're magnanimous in the sense of we put the candidate before we put ourselves. Okay, we exceed expectations. So even if a candidate has this crazy expectation, we go past it, and we learn things both that are personal and professional about the candidate all along the way. So with this as a backdrop, I want to talk a little bit about a journey. Again, your candidate journey is going to be far more sophisticated than what I takes folks through. Okay, so first things first. Thoughtfully is going to be a word that I probably say 180 times during this webinar. I apologize, but I want it to be something that when you think of a candidate experience, you're thoughtful. Not just well, how would I like to feel? Well, that's cool. It's actually a good place to start. How would I, if I were on the other end of this, what would make this special? How would I like to feel? That's being thoughtful. But I want you to go further than that. What would dazzle? What would make something memorable and special for somebody during this experience, during each one of these micro experiences? So candidate-centric is something that I believe, again, as a recruiter, your job is to, even if it is against your interest, tell them the truth. So if a candidate asks you about a hiring manager, maybe a historic question, have they ever been in trouble, with sexual harassment, or do they hire all men, or do they pay women equally? And you know the answer. And again, those are stupid examples, but you know the answer is not the answer that they want to hear. It's your job. It's your responsibility to put their interest above your own and tell the truth. So candidates occasionally do this. They ask, they ask, they ask questions of us, and sometimes we're not transparent, or sometimes we dodge that, or sometimes we act like we can't answer it. And the truth is, we can and should always err on the side of the candidate, and that's what that means. Something that I think's been silly for 30 years now is this concept of being in a war for talent. I've never believed in it. I don't believe in it. I think we, to some degree, are in a war with ourselves about telling the truth, and the truth can be a lot of different things. It can be a prism. It can be a way of looking at us, a line of what we can and can't say. Like we want to, I wish, if I didn't work for the company, I'd say this, or, that would get the hiring manager in trouble, so I can't say this. I think all those are excuses not to tell the candidate the truth. And so I think the real war that's been going on is the war that's within ourselves, and to some degree is about how and where we use the truth. And when do we use the truth, and when do we not use the truth? Lying via omission. And we have difficult jobs. Recruiting, I've said and been on record of saying, it's the hardest job in HR. Out of all of the jobs in HR, from learning, performance, outplacement, etc., payroll, I think recruiting, bringing in talent, is the hardest job. It's the hardest part of HR. But one of the things that makes it even more difficult, I'll be honest, is doing this. What we're about to talk about is making these special moments for candidates whilst being honest. So difficult job. If we do the algebra, difficult job. We want to be highly personalized. Okay, so something that means something only to that candidate, something special, memorable, dazzling, etc. And while at the same time trying to balance all of the interest of the company and ourselves and the candidate, and erring on the side of the candidate, meaning being as honest as we can for the candidate. So now in the next 3 slides, what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about a candidate journey. And Ashley?
Yes, we have a question, and I wanted to see if you'd like to take that before we continue.
I would love to take a question.
This has to do with the candidate journey. Marvin asks, aren't there really 2 journeys? A prospect journey that lasts until pre-apply, and the candidate experience after the application?
That's a great question, Marvin. I think I first of all, I look at all of those things as a candidate, in the sense of there's kind of 3 different relationships, positive and negative, that a human being can have with a company. You're either candidate or not. You're either an employee or not, or you're an alumni or not. So Marvin, the way I look at that is everything before you've become an employee, you're a candidate. Whether or not we found you, sourced you, and whether or not we've marketed to you, and whether or not you've taken an action, and then thusly gotten into the ATS and compliance starts and all these other things start, I think you're a candidate all the way back. Like, I love it when people say, I'm not a candidate. I'm not a candidate for a job. I'm very happy at what I do, etc. In any of those cases, if I actually walked to them and said, "Hey, here's the deal. I got a job in the Cayman Islands, pays $2 million a year," suddenly they're a candidate. Everyone in my world, Marvin, everyone is a candidate for every job until they're not a candidate. So I've combined those 2, and it's okay. And I do like the way you separate prior. Basically, they take an action, they don't take an action. If they haven't taken an action, then you can call them something, pre-candidate. If you want to, you can call them something different. But the idea is that we don't know them. Now we know them. We market to them. Now they take an action, and then once they take that action, for me, all of those things fall under the candidate experience umbrella, and then micro experiences to follow. So this next to each, great question, by the way, Marvin, appreciate you. This candidate journey here is very simplistic, but I'll take you through kind of just what a basic journey would look like. Yours is going to be far more sophisticated, clearly, but basically here is a journey. So they're aware and have interest in your job or your company. Now, what Marvin was speaking about is people that are prior to this. What if they don't have interest in your company or what aren't aware of your jobs, etc. But candidates test and given feedback and kind of move along in your process. Then there's the interaction part where they interact with different parts of your team, be it recruiters and also be it different mediums. Whether or not that's through email or on Zoom, or they do it in person, etc. There can be micro experiences that are created for each one of those to both groups of people that they meet. And in this case, it's hiring managers, recruiters, and the team, etc. And again, your process, it might be different. And for the position, it might be different. So a product manager versus a salesperson, they might have different, you might have a different journey per job. Sounds complex, but it also sounds kind of commonsensical as well. So this is both the treatment of whom they meet with, but how they meet with them. So I want you to kind of think about those, and we'll go into greater detail here in just a second. And then the things that actually happen, and again, this is a 10-step journey, and your journeys are going to be far more complex, but candidates are graded out, hiring team then comes to a decision, they're rejected, whether or not, there's a go forward, then there's a negotiation, a job offer, and whether or not the candidate accepts the offer or not. Then the decision is to made. If they say yes, and we say yes, everybody says yes, then we can move to some pre-boarding activities, which you'll notice how I kind of weave that in here, kind of throw that in there at the very last minute. I'd like for people to think more aggressively about doing more onboarding related activities prior, once someone has said yes, but prior to when they start. And I'll talk a little bit about that as we jump into some of the micro experiences. All right, so the next number of slides, I want to say 40, but that's not true. The next 30 slides are specific examples, and in black is kind of the context, and in green is kind of what I would like for you to think about. I'm one of these people, I hate it when people read slides to me, so I'll try not to do that. I'll try to be around that, but not read to you, because hoping that you know how to read and you don't like people reading to you as well. So starting off this journey, just as we did with that, the 10-step journey that they're aware they had interest. Okay, so your sourcing team has found Sally. Now, one of the things that I want you to get out of this slide is the last part where I say discover her hobbies. Because normally when we source someone, we find out all the things that we need to that are relevant to the job, qualifications, experience, work history, all of the things that make kind of fill in the job description and the job ad that kind of makes Sally relevant to then put in a pool of people that we think are going to be good for the job. Whilst doing so, I want you to find out things that are also personal about Sally. And we're going to use that later, but I want you to just kind of plant a flag right there that I want you to find out more than just the typical things that you find out about Sally and Sally's work experience. Now, Sally is, you've marketed to Sally, and Sally's now in your system, okay? And one of the things that I would suggest that you do, if you're very interested in Sally, is find her on Twitter, interact with her, follow her, retweet some of the things that she does. All you're really doing is showing interest in what Sally's interested in. And I'm not asking you to fake anything. I'm not asking you to do something that you're not comfortable with. But at the same time, I want you to send a signal to the candidate that A, I really find you fascinating. B, I would like to be a part of your world in some way, even if it's just on social. And I would like to, follow you and get to know you a little bit better. There's nothing wrong or weird about that. All you're doing is showing interest, which isn't a bad thing. Now what you see in green is in quotes. So this is actually, now we've moved away, that now that instead of just things that I'd like for you to do, this is kind of how I want you to think and speak. This slide in particular is wayfinding, which we do, generally speaking, we do a poor job of wayfinding through our system. And again, getting back to my take on recruiters being the advocate for the candidate, I want you to take that to an extreme. Hey, Sally, how you doing? Thank you for applying. We really, really love what you have going on. Here's what's next. This idea that they get surprised by anything, we should throw all surprises out. There should be no surprises at all. Okay. Sally should know exactly what's coming next and how to prepare for it and how to also be great at it. And our job as recruiters is to make sure that Sally's ready for what's next. So we have to communicate what's next. So you'll see a lot of that in these slides and these micro experiences. So, and again, that journey, candidates are assessed and given feedback, etc. Assessments come in many forms, as we well know: personality assessments, behavioral assessments, skills testing, etc. One of the things that we want to convey to the candidate at that particular moment is, hey, listen, these are filters that we use that have been proven to us that are useful filters to filter people in and filter people out. And we use these filters religiously because we believe in them. And you passed all of these filters, you passed all these tests. Now, look what I do in the second part of the, I flip everything around. After giving her, Sally, the good news, like, hey, you passed all these tests. I know they're a pain in the neck, but you passed all of them. Thank you for taking them. What would you like to learn about us? I've woven that in there very specifically. Everything in green is very specific because I'm trying to then get them to loosen up and give me more information. Like, what do you want to really know about us? What do you want to know about our company? What do you want to know about the hiring manager? What do you want to know about me? What do you want to know about anything? Because you've just been through, 2 hours of assessments and you passed, which is the good news. But the other news is, hey, I care enough to ask you, stop down. Like, what would you like to learn about our firm or us or me or anything? So that's very specific, both the timing and the placement, and also what I'm trying to get out of Sally, because I'm trying to wayfind at the same time of giving her good news at the same time of then saying, hey, listen, there's probably some things on your list that you'd like to know. Let's get to those things as well. And Ashley, I know at any given point, if you break in, just break in. It's okay. If you have any questions, don't worry about it.
Oh, sure will. And send your questions. We're waiting.
Yes, please do. Please do. All right, so what do we do with a rejection? How do we deal with rejection? And again, historically, we've not been great at communicating rejection because it's hard. No one likes to say no. No one likes to be the person that says no to someone. However, again, if we want to create kind of a micro moment and a good moment, even for Jan, this is that moment where we can actually say, Jan, hey, listen, after everything was said and done, you passed the test, everything went well, but this isn't the right role for you. And we'll figure it out. We want you on our team. We like you, but this wasn't the right role. And notice at the very end, I'm offering the, hey, would you like to talk? Would you like to actually email? Or would you like to talk? Would you like to text? Would you like to kind of go through things? That's fine. Like, I'm not just going to give you bad news and say, peace, that's it. Have a great life. I want to, with any candidate, I want to continue that relationship forever. And while that job might not have worked out, that's okay. That job didn't work out. Some jobs don't work out. But I want to keep in touch, and I want to. It's like this, based in this philosophy of sales, actually. And there's only two rules in sales. One is be honest, and the second is I want to sell to you for the rest of your life, which it goes back to rule number one, right? If I'm always honest with you, chances are I'll always be able to sell to you for the rest of your life. And it's the same thing with candidates. If I've communicated to you and I've told you what's going on and I've not lied to you, and I care enough to get on the phone or talk to you and talk through kind of what wasn't the fit. Hey, we got into this. Hiring manager said that they wanted a bachelor's of science. We had such great candidate flow. They then upped it to a master's. They wanted somebody with an MBA as well as a BS degree, and you don't have an MBA. So you were a perfect fit when we first went out, and then they changed they changed the qualification instrument, and then you fell out. That's it. It's as simple as that. You were qualified, you were wonderful, everyone loved you, and then they changed the qualification instrument and you fell out because you didn't fit that. But you know what? You're still hireable for a lot of different jobs within the company. We don't want you to have a bad experience. You want to get on the phone, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's a way to create rejection that isn't crippling, and it also isn't ghosting. We don't just poof, thanks for your application, bye. We communicate with people. If they've communicated with us, we communicate with them. All right, so candidates that go forward are obviously a little bit easier. Rejection's harder for everyone. This is more wayfinding. So this is what Sally is going to do next. This is what's coming. This is the next few steps. You're not trying to go all the way to the end, but here's the next few things. And then the last part of that in green again, how can I make this process easy for you? Purposely placed right here. So I'm going to explain, as a recruiter, I'm going to explain to a candidate, Sally, the journey and the process. They're already made it through a number of steps. But now what I'm going to do is explain an even deeper level of what comes next. And I'm going to take on the responsibility of saying, how can I make this game or this process easy for you, a winnable game, an easy game, etc. What can I do to make this process easy for you? And it's a question that we should be asking more often. If we're not asking, let's start with the basics. If we're not asking, we should be asking this question, period. And if we are asking it, we should be asking it more often. It might be a question that you ask at every phone call. How can I make this process easier? What else can I be doing to make this easy for you? What else can I be doing to make this a joyful, dazzling, memorable, wonderful experience for you?
Hey, William.
Yes.
Ready for a question?
Yeah, sure.
Oh. Marvin says, I love your ideas of transparency and welcoming. I am curious, though, how do you do this at the scale that an enterprise operates? In other words, how do you keep the human experience front and center in a high candidate volume environment?
Well, first of all, it's hard, and I'm not gonna lie to anybody. There's nothing easy about making things highly personal. The opposite is, if you don't make things highly personal, someone else will. So it's easy for us to kind of think about all the recs that we have and how hard our job is and how hard it is. I've got, 60 recs that I'm trying to fill. How do I make this personal to all these candidates, and how do I make this special for each one of them? I'm getting to a point now where, with the bottom half of millennials and all of Gen Z, where personalization is not an extra. They've grown up in a world where personalization is normal. Like everything that they've ever done, things have been personalized to them. Their playlist, the YouTube list that they look at, like everything has been personalized around them and to them. And so when we ask the question, how does this scale? If you want the talent, you figure out how to scale it. If you don't want the talent, then you hide behind, and I don't mean this, Marvin, I don't mean this in a bad way. You hide behind what is typically an old excuse for not being able to do things on a personal way, or do things in a personal way. And the truth is if you have too many recs and you can't do it, and you can't make it personal, you're not going to get that talent. That's just one of the things that you're going to get. You'll get the B talent or the C and D and F talent, but you won't get the A talent, because the A talent doesn't just expect this. This is easy and normal for them. So you kind of look down like, okay, you're hiring cashiers for Walmart. Maybe you don't have to personalize it to the degree that we're talking about. Maybe it needs to be personal at 5 steps. If you're hiring a VP of marketing for an enterprise, maybe it's not 5 steps. Maybe it's 22 different steps that it needs to be personal. And you're just going to have to figure that out, where you balance being personal and having a personalized experience for Sally and getting quality talent. Because I don't believe that you're going to be able to get quality talent if you don't start making the move to making things dazzling and memorable and wonderful for those candidates. So great question, and it's a natural question, like how the hell do I do my job and do all of these things that you're talking about? You're not, Marvin, you're not the first to ask the question. I think the answer is somewhere in the recs that you're managing, and the ability to get A talent. And if you need A talent in those positions, then you've got to find a way to make it super personalized. So let's get back to, go ahead.
You ready for another?
I am, indeed.
Oh, so thank you. First of all, that was an awesome answer. And Susan asks, you mentioned that when rejecting a candidate, you might want to keep in touch and consider the person for another role. However, what if the candidate has poor soft skills and we do not want to stay engaged, but still want to be diplomatic with the rejection?
Yeah, that's a great question, Susan.
Yeah.
So don't lie. Don't lie. I mean, if it's keep in touch, there might be a position at one point. If there is no position at any point, then don't lie. Just say, hey, listen, this job didn't work out. I'm not sure what the future holds for either of us or the company, but if something comes up, or if if I move, or if you move and something changes drastically in our lives, then we might want to keep in touch with one another. Let's stay on LinkedIn together, or let's stay connected. But Susan, it's a great question, and it really gets to the heart of, just don't lie. That's a moment where you don't tell them that they're a perfect match, or they just missed it and everybody gets a trophy, etc. No, if you don't have to beat them, but at the same time, don't lie. And so my advice, and even in that situation, is just to say, hey, listen, this wasn't a good fit. Really wish you well. Let's keep in touch, because things might change on my end or on your end, and I'd love to I keep in touch with all candidates. So it's more generic in that sense, and you're not making any promises or you're creating any expectations. And at the same time, you're telling the truth. So great question. Fantastic question. Marvin, Susan, stars by your name. Great questions. As y'all have been staring at this screen for a couple seconds now, I don't want to belabor the point, but at the end of this in green, notice what I pivot to. I'm your advocate. Think of me as such. So it's wayfinding. Okay, Sally, here's what's going to happen. You're going to then meet these people. Talked about this. I want you to feel comfortable. And I'm your advocate. I'll always be your advocate through this process. And I want you to think of me as such. Okay, I'm not against you. I'm with you. So when candidates meet with your recruiters or your hiring team, your group of people for the first time, one of the things that you can do, and this is just a simple kind of a thing that you can make it, if they're coming to your office, you can create a parking spot for them. It's not that difficult. Okay, so and it could be candidates of this for this job. I mean, it could be personal to Sally, or it could be that you're making it for several people that are interviewing for that job in that day. That's fine. But the idea that they don't have to park in the very back of the parking lot, but they also understand, where your office is and how long or so it'll take to get there. Now, old school would be, well, why is this my responsibility? Old school would be, get on Google Maps and figure it out yourself. And a part of me understands that, and the reconciliation is this: this generation, both millennials and Gen Z, they don't operate that way. So if you want to kind of still hold to, and I'm Gen X, so I could definitely hold to this position of like, hey, seriously, go to Google, like type in the address, you can figure out your commute, you're on yourself. However, if you want the talent, you bend to where the talent is. And this is where the talent is. This is what we need to do. If we want them to feel special, then we need to go out of our way to make them feel special, even if it's outside of what we think is normal or how things were when we came through. And again, that's an excuse that we use, like, well, no one printed out a Google map for me or told me how long my commute was. I've just figured it out. Yeah, again, that's okay. And we can live in the past, or we can think about the future and think about the talent that is today. This is if your candidates meet digitally with recruiters, so Skype, Zoom, any of those types of things. This slide, I've purposely put in something that I want y'all to consider, and this is where we ask for feedback. So each one of these has something purposely done in it. This is where we ask, hey, how am I doing? Is there anything I could be doing differently to make your experience better? This is something people do in customer service at fine hotels or fine restaurants, where it's just normal. Hey, is there anything I could do? I mean, we've all been at a restaurant where the manager comes around. Hey, how are y'all doing? Is everybody having a good experience? Is there anything else that we could do to make your experience better? like like that's happened to every human being, right? At one point or another. Maybe we should be doing some of those things as well. Maybe we should be asking questions of candidates as they see us. What else can we be doing to make this experience special for you? So yes, while we're helping them navigate the next step in their process, it's a phone call. Okay, so notice what I'm doing here in green, and drone racing in particular. This is a hobby. So during the interaction, you mentioned something that you're really interested in. Sally did, and I took note of it. And the reason I want to take note of it is I want to use that later on. At some point, I want to keep notes of Sally that are both personal and professional. So the professional stuff's pretty easy. And we do a decent job of actually documenting the professional things that match up to the job ad. But the personal things is where we're going to be able to make a personal experience for them. And that's why we want to pay attention to those things when they talk about them, because we'll then be able to then ask them questions about it, interact with them in a way that's deeper and more personal about things that they care about. So this is interacting with hiring managers, and we could talk for an hour about hiring managers and the difficult parts of kind of navigating hiring managers. They don't know what they don't know. They don't know what they don't want or do want. They've made up a job description that's completely made up, whatever. Like we could literally do a webinar on bad hiring managers. But this slide is more about getting Sally to the point of them understanding what hiring managers want. And so again, as an advocate, but also doing wayfinding, you're allowing the candidate to understand, hey, this is what they care about. These are the types of questions that they're going to ask. And some of it's going to be, difficult. Some of it's there's no prep, but this is why they're asking these questions. So some of it's the what are the questions? And some of it is, why they're asking that particular type of question. So I'm asking that type of question because I'm trying to find out this. So like it doesn't need to be a Rubik's Cube. The interview, it doesn't need to be surprise, littered with surprises. And also it doesn't need to be hard. They're either going to make the job or they're not. They're either going to be qualified or not. But it doesn't need to be guesswork on their behalf, and we don't need to allow them to run through that like that. So this one right here, my favorite bit about this right here is, again, this is wayfinding. They're going to meet in real life with the hiring managers, and okay, so what's your favorite drink and snack? So this is something that you can do that is so simple, we totally ignore it, myself included. I have made this particular mistake myself and learned from it. So when we're talking to candidates, like, well, just part of the conversation and wayfinding, here's what's going to happen. Here's, planned for 3 hours. They're going to rotate different managers. These are important things that they need to know about the process, etc. But simple things like, what's your favorite snack? Like, are you like Cliff Bars? Cool. Like, what, mint chocolate chip? Cool. What's your favorite drink? Fresca? Great. Fantastic. And when they come in, that's what they have. There's Cliff Bars and Fresca. And they feel, A, that they were listened to, which is important, but also they feel just naturally comfortable, right? Like this is just like, these are things that I like. They're going to ask me a ton of difficult questions. This is going to be difficult. And I need to be myself and answer as best I can. But Cliff Bars and Fresca are here. And I can't wait because I'm already naturally, it's a familiar place. It's a familiar experience because these are things that I naturally like. So again, more wayfinding, but this is when they meet digitally with hiring managers. And again, some people, especially when you have multi-location or international, they couldn't make that first meeting, or maybe they weren't supposed to, and they were only going to meet if the person passed, etc. The very end of this is what I really want you to key in on. I'll practice with you. So if you're not used to kind of web conferencing calls, the lighting and sound quality and kind of making yourself really kind of win at these things, yeah, I'll help you. I ask you some of the same questions, and you can kind of get the bit and understand, how to both set your laptop up to where you look great, but also how you sound great. This is, again, being an advocate for the candidate means being an advocate for the candidate. That's what it entails, is doing things like this. It's thinking thoughts like this and doing things like that. So it's words and actions simultaneously. So,
William,
yes,
would you like a question?
I would, indeed. I always
Uh,
like questions.
Thank you. So, as a company that sends out candidate experience surveys at the end of the process for the candidate, when in the process can we ask about their experience, or can we save the question for the survey?
No, I think you ask all the time. I think it's omnipresent. I think you're always asking, as you should be with employees and the employee experience and alumni and the alumni experience. I think you should do this with candidates at every moment, every touch point. Every time you touch a candidate, how are you doing? What can we be doing better? What do you like about our experience? What do you not like about our experience? That gathering of data should be omnipresent, never stop, relentless pursuit of how we're doing and how we could make things better. So waiting to the end, again, first of all, doing it at the end is fine. That's one data point, but it might not reflect their entire experience. They might have forgotten things at the very beginning, or there might have been one bad experience that they really remember out of the 150 great experiences. So I would do that more as a finger on the pulse, as opposed to just one time at the very end. And who was that question from?
That was from Naisha. I hope I
Aisha?
pronounced that correctly. Yes.
Wonderful question. Thank you for asking. So in this one, as people, again, not reading slides to people and offending people's intelligence, this after the call, after the bid, text me, tell me how the thing went. This is important because what you're doing to the candidate, what you're essentially conveying to the candidate is, I care. I'll hear their side. I'll hear the story from them. But I want to hear the story from you. How did it go? What did you like? What could we have done differently in prep, etc. Text me right after you get done. Just text me. Tell me what's going on. Candidates interacting with the team again, wayfinding. They've reviewed your resume. They've made notes. They've looked at your LinkedIn. You might want to do some of the same with them as well. So what you're coaching. Wow, wait a minute. That's the first time I've used that term. What you're coaching the candidate to do is you're coaching the candidate to win. And so they're going to do their due diligence. Your team is going to do their due diligence on Sally. Sally, do your due diligence on the team. And here's how. Here's the Twitter accounts. Here's the LinkedIn accounts. Here's what you should know about these folks that I know. And go research. Have questions for them. It's a two-way street. They're going to have questions for you. You should have questions for them. And oh, by the way, do your homework. And it's okay. It's not stalking. There's no rules being broken. It's do your research because they're going to do their research on you. So, you got a question?
Two more.
All
So,
right.
is using WhatsApp as a platform to personalize candidate experience too personal?
Not at all. Not at all. Not at all. And again, here's how you start that. Who is that question from?
Um, Please forgive me if I say your name incorrectly. Tejaswini?
Okay. So here's the thing. Ask them. That's the first thing. It's like, hey, I noticed that you're on out and WhatsApp. Do you mind if we use that as our platform to communicate? Or would you rather me call and leave your voicemails or text using something else or email? Like, what's your preference? But it's a great question and great timing too, because it's meet the candidate where they are. So if they're not comfortable with WhatsApp, they'll tell you, nah, I just have my family on WhatsApp. Oh, okay, cool. Where would you like for us to communicate? Well, why don't you just text me on my cell phone? Okay, cool. Sounds great. Like you don't really care, but what you do care about is making sure that it fits them and you don't do anything that they don't like. And it's just too easy to ask. And what was the second question?
So Ray asks, as a recruiter for an agency, we work with multiple clients in different states. What
Right.
else can we say to a candidate when waiting on hiring managers to provide feedback on an interview and or submittal besides being honest and saying that we are waiting for the hiring manager?
Yeah, I think some of that is, first of all, great question, Ray. It's difficult because hiring managers sometimes will tell us 2 weeks and then it's 4 weeks later, and so we've got to be transparent with candidates about that. Like, hey, listen, we control this much of the process, and I can help you through this much of the process. But at the end of the day, the hiring manager is going to make the decision when they make the decision. So my job is to follow up with them, Ray. My job is to follow up with them every other day to just see where they're at in the process, and then my job is to communicate to you. So I'll do that, but I can't force them to make a decision, and I can't force a timeline on them that's either not natural or something that they don't want. And if they want the process to drag out for 6 weeks, there's nothing I can do other than to follow up with them religiously and just see where they are in the process, and then communicate with you. So again, it's being honest, and letting them know like what you can control and what you can't control. It's a great question, not just for third party, actually. Ray, I'll tell you, corporate has the exact same problem with hiring managers in particular. In this slide, you can read it for yourself, and y'all will get all these slides and get the recording and all that stuff. But at the end is what I'm really trying to kind of get is not just in my coaching, I'm also validating, hey, listen, you're doing really well. You're doing great. You just be yourself. Just be yourself. You're brilliant. You're going to be fine. Text me after the meeting, etc. Again, you're reassuring them the same time of doing wayfinding and coaching. This is true advocacy at work. Candidates meet digitally with the team. Okay, you can read all of that stuff. So at the very end, you're bringing up some of the personal stuff that you've gathered along the way, drone racing in particular. You're going to really like this person. She's a geek, and you like drone racing. I know that she does as well. You're automatically going to kind of connect. And so, you might even want to start the conversation out with, hey, I heard that you like, and then just start there and just, start the conversation with something that where that you're going to automatically kind of connect with the person. So you're coaching and you're being an advocate and you're wayfinding. Candidates having phone calls with the team. This is the CEO. Sally, CEO has heard all about you. She'd like to, get to know you a little bit. She's in London, so there's some time that we have to kind of navigate. You're also going to be on a virtual call, conference call, etc. I want you to understand kind of what she's all about. So here's what she's heard, kind of seen and heard, and what really has impressed her. Then I want you to kind of get to know her. So here's your research. Here's how you kind of prepare for a successful call with Janet. And I'll work to get the call scheduled. So then my role in this is I'll get Janet's schedule and I'll get your schedule and I'll make sure that I get it to where it works for the both of you. We'll prep. I'll make sure that you'll be successful with that call. But it's rare that the CEO cares this much, but it's a good sign. And I want to make sure that you do a great job here. Here's a part of our process that candidates are not familiar with and they don't understand. And so it's graded out, and you're in your organization and your process, you'll call it different things. But essentially, it's when we compare notes and go, okay, we have 5 viable candidates for this position. Which one is the best, and which one's the hiring manager? Which one are we going to extend offers to, etc. So explaining this to candidates, like demystifying this process and just saying, okay, this is what happens. We go through 100 candidates, we get it down to 10, we get the 10 down to 5, we sit around a conference table, and we go through each one of the pros and cons for each of the 5 people. Don't be nervous. This is a normal thing. This is the last stage or the final stage in the hiring process, and this is what we always do. And, they'll make good decisions. They're going to talk to me on this day, and if I know something sooner, I will text you. So what have I done in that whole thing is I've demystified something that should have never been mystical to begin with. It's not voodoo, it's a process, letting them know what the process is and having some understanding of the process is the way that we do advocacy. All right, so
William,
Sally went, yes,
we have time for a question.
we do, we have 6 minutes.
We have 2 questions here. First one, how do you overcome the challenge that so many of these interactions are, in quotes, artificial? In particular, I think about the person who interviewed really well, but wasn't the right fit when they started. That's from Jeffrey.
All right, Jeffrey, if they're not the right fit, I mean, first of all, it doesn't need to be artificial. So let's take that part first. It doesn't need to be artificial. If this is just one of those communications that we send out, we should probably then take a moment to then say, hey, this wasn't a good fit for this reason, and be specific. It says in the job description that a BA in art history is required. You don't have a BA in art history, but your resume and your resume data stays in our ATS so that another job might come up. We will search through our ATS and another job will come up. But if it's not artificial to give them feedback. If it's just a form letter that just comes out of the ATS, then yeah, that's that. Well, first of all, that's not really being an advocate. That might be maybe very efficient, but that's not being an advocate. And what I would suggest is let's stop doing anything that's form related, because just think of yourself. Do you like form letters? Do I like form letters? No. None of us like to feel like we're the one of the 85,000 that got that email. That's why email marketing has been declining for years, is because no one likes to feel that way. So let's not do that. So that's first things first. And did we have another question?
Yes, this is also from Tejaswini. Again, I
Mhm.
hope I pronounced your name correctly. How do we involve hiring managers in creating a great candidate experience?
By not allowing them to muck things up. And that's I'm being honest, but from a third party and corporate perspective, is not allowing them to create a bad experience for candidates. And like, this is one of those deals. You've got to actually go to them and say, our job is to create a great candidate experience. You don't have to hire the person. That's not the point. But you have to be a decent human being. And so now you can't be that person where you're going to muck things up, where we've created a ton of energy and a ton of great goodwill with these candidates for you to mess up. That's not acceptable. So we just don't accept that. We just don't accept that behavior. And again, it starts with a hard conversation like, hey, listen, you might have gotten away with murder up until this point, but if you want me to recruit for these positions, I'll do my damnedest to get you the best slate of candidates that I can possibly get you, but you're going to need to be better with candidates. Okay. And here's how, here's why, here's all of these things. And if they can't or don't, then escalate it. Like, this is bad managers are the bane of every organization's existence. So if they're a bad manager and they're a bad hiring manager, then out them. Don't accept the behavior. So this one you've already read. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but I know you're disappointed. I know you didn't get the job, but let's talk. This is actually with someone that is qualified, counter to the question we had earlier. This is someone that you would like to have hired, but for whatever reason just didn't make the cut. This is a person that did make the cut. They've got the offer. We've talked comp. We've already done all the hard work. I'll have all this stuff done by Wednesday. Now, we've got about 3 minutes left. This is a moment where you can create something special. And we're going to take Sally as a great example. So Sally's getting a job offer. The worst thing you could do at this particular moment is send Sally a DocuSign or a PDF to sign. It's the worst thing you could do. What you could do at this particular moment is send something drone racing related to Sally with an offer letter in it, and then send them the digital requirement that they need to sign. But sending them a digital thing first is it's chemical. It's like walking into a doctor's office. It's super chemical, and it's not needed. We've done all these special things all the way up to this point, and then all of a sudden we do something that's really chemical. Don't do that. Don't do that. Don't take that opportunity to do something really special and dazzle Sally. Here's a FedEx package, signed letter from Janet. Text me once you get the package. I'm excited for you. Again, being that candidate and conveying that, hey, you're going to get this. This is important. Candidates reject the offer. Now, Sally's been through this whole process. You've been an advocate. You've fallen in love with Sally as a candidate. You've done everything you could, but she decided to go a different direction. Here's where grace, that last sentence, it needs to become kind of your moniker. Hey, you made my job easier. Let's grab coffee sometime. If things don't work out at Newco, I would love for you to come back and join us. I want to work with you forever. I want us to be connected. So this one didn't work out. Got it. Understand. However, if it does, if I want to be connected to you, and again, these are candidates that you want to be connected to. This is making the assumption that you're dealing with people that you do want to be connected to. Don't lie, and don't do anything that's out of your comfort zone. This is when candidates accept the offer. Now what you're doing is you're giving dramatic foreshadowing to the onboarding process, and you're giving them the idea that, hey, this is what comes next. After you got the offer letter, you'll sign it. I'll send you a DocuSign. You'll sign that. Then I'm gonna send you an employee handbook. We're gonna get things kind of started so that you can get to know the company. Blah blah blah. So this is, again, same thing. Before you officially onboard to the company, the more you can do to get them into the swing of things before they start, the better. And again, this is just continuing your advocacy into its next and logical step. So I've made all of this sound very easy, and like I get it. I know how difficult all of this is, and I know what I'm asking. And I also know, counter to what you've done, how difficult this is to both do it at scale and volume and to personalize it. So I get it, I understand, but if we don't start, we're never going to get to a point where we're good at personalization, or we're good at the ability to create memorable experiences. This is a concept. These micro experiences, micro moments, is something I've been studying for about 2 years now, and I love it. I'm learning something every day. So if you need more examples of what you can do at those different inflection points, this is all my contact data, pretty easy to find on the internet. Just reach out to me, and I'll try to help you with specific things. So, those that are hiring high volume and people that are hiring third party, et cetera, everyone's got something unique going on. And so this webinar was just kind of to dip our toe in the water. But as you have questions and when you have questions, just reach out, because I'd love to help out. I also love to hear things that you're doing, things that are working. So things that you've tried and that have been really successful for you. And we're 2 minutes over. I apologize, but we also had a bunch of wonderful questions. And Ashley, what do we do next? Ashley, you're on mute.
Hello.
Yes. Hey, Ashley.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened there, but we do have another question if you'd like to
Well,
answer
bring it.
that.
Bring it.
Okay, let me pull that up.
I'm doing it. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. I love those pics too. All righty, go ahead.
Susan says, wouldn't someone need info on benefits before accepting an offer? It's part of the whole package.
That's exactly right. Not only would you need to know, you'd need to know enough to explain it to somebody. So what I'm suggesting there, Susan, is that you get with your benefits people and you understand the benefits enough to where you can say, hey, I want to extend these, I want to send this to them so it pre-boards them, so they start to form their questions. They can read the material and start to form their questions so that when they get to you in the benefits class, then they'll be intelligent to be able to ask intelligent questions. And most benefits people, they'd love that. They'd love for somebody to actually like come to class or come to that part of the onboarding experience like already having some like my questions about specific things about pharmacy and in network, out networks, things like that. They'd love to have those questions. Most of the time it's just talking to a room and they've got a packet and they haven't read it yet, and there go they don't have questions. So you don't have to be a benefits, Susan, you don't have to be a benefits expert. So be clear about that. You're the advocate for the candidate. You want to get them the things that they need to, that they're going to be going through in that first day, week, month, whatever onboarding looks like. And you're getting it to them so that they can then talk and read and then formulate questions. But you're not going to answer those questions. And you can make that painfully clear to the candidate as well. Like, I am not a benefits expert. I'm going to get you the package so that you can look through it, so that you can ask intelligent questions for the benefits people. And they're experts, and they'll be able to answer your questions. great question though.
Love it. Love it. Well, it looks like we've gone through all of those questions.
Alrighty.
So this was brilliant. Thank you so much for being here, William.
Well, I'm glad to be here. I love the topic. And again, a resource for everybody at any given point. Please reach out to me.
Definitely. And like mentioned before, any complaints about bad tattoo choices after advice given during this webinar can go straight to William. This was great, William. Thank you. Thank you, everyone, for being here. As you know, we do these twice a week. We have a great sourcing, or I'm sorry, twice a month. We have a great sourcing webinar coming up next week on the 17th with Dean. So join us. Join us. Come be with us. Everyone have a wonderful week. If you have any questions, send them our way. Thanks. Bye,
Thank
William.
you. All right. Thanks, Ashley. Appreciate you.
You too. See you soon.